Budget 2021 £5 fund to help High Street recover from COVID. A new £5 cash grant scheme for high street businesses aims to get the tills ringing again. Rishi Sunak said.
Rishi
Sunak says, ahead of Wednesday's budget, the Chancellor said the grant worth up to £18,000 per firm will help shops and pubs reopen as England eases lockdown. The one-off payment has been broadly welcomed by businesses, but some groups have said it does not go far enough. Mr. Sunak was warned public finances face a challenge due to the pandemic amid enormous strains. The Chancellor said earlier this weekend he wanted to level with people about the challenges, but added, I will do whatever it takes to protect the British people through this crisis, and I remained committed to that. The Treasury will not comment on newspaper reports that suggest Mr. Sunak could free some income tax thresholds for 3 years and raises corporation tax. The government has so far borrowed £271 this financial year, up £222 on 2019 to 20. This has pushed the national debt to £2.13 trillion. With that grants, nearly 700,000 shops, restaurants, hotels, hair salons, gyms, and other businesses in England will be eligible for the so-called Restart grants, to be distributed directly to firms by local authorities from April. It will replace the current monthly grant system. The funding takes the total spent on direct grants to businesses during the pandemic to £25, the Treasury said. The developed nations will receive equivalent extra funding. Mr. Sunak told the Mail on Sunday it had been an incredibly difficult year for our high streets and that the new money would provide businesses the support they need to get them through, get them back on their feet, and get the tills raining once again. Non-essential shops in England, along with outdoor hospitality, will be allowed to reopen from the 12th of April as the earlier. Details of the grant scheme come as part of a series of announcements ahead of Mr. Sunak's annual economic speech on Wednesday, including a new government-backed mortgage guarantee scheme for home buyers with small deposits. And elite, 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 elite. Elite, an elite visa to encourage high-skilled workers, including researchers, engineers, and scientists, to come to the UK. £126 million for traineeships and a first job apprenticeship in English.
Apprenticeship in England.
Apprenticeship in England. A first job apprenticeship apprenticeship in England, and a world-first green savings bond for retail investors to help boost the UK transition to net zero emissions. Mike Cherry, National Chair of the Federation of Small Businesses, welcomed the much needed ninth nine provided to business by the grants, but called for the chancellors to set out more funding for those that have been excluded from income support throughout this crisis. UK Hospitality Chief Executive Kate Nichols, Kate
Kate Nichols.
Kate Nichols said businesses were crying out for the cash and urged the grants to be paid as soon as possible. And Helen Dickinson of the British Retail Consortium, which represents chain stores, said the latest money was a vital injection of funding, but warned it would only provide temporary relief if the business's wait holiday did not continue. Other groups called for the extension of the furlong scheme. Furlong scheme of the furlong scheme. Other groups called for the extension of the furlong scheme. Furlong scheme. Furlong scheme. Furlong scheme. Furlough scheme. Furlough scheme. Furlough scheme. A period of time that a soldier, worker, or prisoner is allowed to be absent, especially to return temporarily to their own home. Furlough. Other groups called for the extension of the furlough scheme and a temporary reduction in value-added tax on hospitality sales. Last year was the worst for the high streets in more than 25 years as the pandemic accelerated the move towards online shopping, with more than 180,000 jobs lost in retail alone, according to the Center for Retail Research. Mr. Sunak is facing pressure on taxes and spending from backbench Tories and Labour. Some Conservative MPs, such as former Brexit Secretary David Davis, have also spoken out against attempts to increase taxes. Tory rebels have been told that they risked having the whip withdraw if they vote against the budget. Labour has said it opposes tax rises in the short term and has called for a £20 uplift in universal credits to be kept. But Conservative former Chancellor Noel Craig has encouraged Mr. Sunak to consider raising VAT, national insurance and income tax in order to repair the public finance. Meanwhile, Labour said it wanted a jobs promise to ensure young people do not become a lost generation due to the pandemic. Under Labour's plan, all 16 to 24-year-olds out of work or education for 6 months would be helped into jobs or studies, the party said. The party estimated that more than 1 million people will become long-term unemployed in 2021 and 22, with 660,000 young people out of work or education for 6 months or more. The most recent unemployment rate for October to December was 5.1%, according to the Office for National Statistics, equivalent to 1.74 million people. Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Jonathan Reynolds said that without immediate action, a lost generation scared by unemployment could be created. Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine, FDA approved single-shot jab. U.S. regulators have formally approved the single-shot Johnson & Johnson coronavirus vaccine, the third jab to be authorized in country. The vaccine is said to be cost-effective alternative to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and can be stored in refrigerator instead of a freezer. Refrigerator instead of a freezer. Trials found it prevented serious illness but was 66% effective overall when moderate cases were included. The vaccine is made by the
Belgian firm
Janssen. The company has agreed to provide the U.S. with $100 million by the end of June. The first doses could be available to the U.S. public as early as next week. The UK, EU, and Canada have also ordered doses, and 500 million doses have also been ordered through the COVAX scheme to supply poorer nations. President Joe Biden hailed it as exciting news for all Americans and an encouraging development, but warned that the fight is far from over. Though we celebrate today's news, I urge all Americans keep washing your hands, stay socially distanced, and keep wearing masks, he said in a statement. As I have said many times, things are still likely to get worse again as new variants spread, and the current improvements could be reversed. The authorization by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration came after an external committee of experts unanimously
backed the vaccine on Friday.
Unanimous.
Unanimously. unanimously, unanimously,
unanimously, unanimously, unanimously, unanimously. Unanimously means in a way that is agreed or supported by everyone in a group. Unanimously, 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 unanimous,
unanimous,
unanimous, unanimous, unanimously, unanimous, unanimously. The authorization by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration came after an external committee of experts unanimously of experts. The authorization by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration came after an external committee of experts unanimously backed the vaccine on Friday. An external committee of experts unanimously backed came after an external committee of experts unanimously backed the vaccine on Friday. Results from trials conducted in the US, South Africa, and Brazil showed it was more than 85% effective at preventing serious illnesses and 66% effective overall when moderate cases were included. Notably, there were no deaths among participants who had received the vaccine, and no hospital admissions after 28 days post-vaccine. Overall protection was lower in South Africa and Brazil, where virus variants have become dominant. Dominant. Dominant.
Dominant.
Dominant, where virus variants have become dominant, but defense against severe or critical illness was similarly high. Overall protection was lower in South Africa and Brazil, where virus variants have become dominant, but defense against severe or critical illness was similarly high. South Africa began administering the unapproved Johnson & Johnson jab to healthcare workers as part of the study earlier this month. It came after early trials subjected the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine over the minimal protection against mild disease from the variants dominant in large parts of the country. So far, the only other country to approve the vaccine for emergency use is Bahrain, which gave it the green light on Thursday because the vaccine will require fewer doses than its two shot Pfizer and Moderna counterparts. It will also require fewer vaccine appointments and medical staff. Who else has ordered the Johnson & Johnson jab? UK 30 million doses, EU 200 million doses, Canada 38 million doses, COVAX nations 500 million doses. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine uses a common cold virus that has been engineered to make it harmless. It then safely carries part of the coronavirus genetic code into the body. This is enough for the body to recognize the threat and then learn to fight coronavirus. This trains the body's immune system. This trains the body's immune system to fight coronavirus when it encounters the virus for real. This is similar to the approach used by the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca and AstraZeneca. What is the situation in the US? About 72.8 million Americans have already been vaccinated, and about 1.3 million doses are being administered across the country each day. President Biden has pledged to administer 100 million vaccines in his first 100 days in office. Pledged. More than 508,000 people in the US have died of COVID, but new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have all been on the decline over the past few weeks. Hospitalizations.
Hospitalizations.
Hospitalization.
More than 508,000 people in the US have died of COVID, but new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have all been on the decline over the past few weeks. Top public health experts, however, continue to warn that mutations of the virus can still threaten progress. Mutation. The mystery of India's lack of scat- skeletons.
Lake of skeletons.
Lack of skeletons. Skeleton. The film of bone supporting a human or animal body. The mystery of India's neck of skeletons. High in the Indian Himalayas, a remote lake nestled in a snowy valley is surrounded with hundreds of human skeletons. Rupkund Neck is located 5,029 meters above sea level at the bottom of a steep slope on Trisol, one of India's highest mountains in the state of Uttarakhand. The remains are strewn. The remains are strewn around and beneath the ice as the lake of Scotland, discovered by a patrolling British forest ranger in 1942. For more than half a century, anthropologists and scientists have studied the remains. The lake has attracted curious scientists and visitors for years. Depending on the season and weather, the lake, which remains frozen for most of the year, expands and shrinks. Only when the snow melts are the skeletons visible, sometimes with flesh attached and well preserved. Today, the skeletal remains of an estimated 600 and 800 people have been found here. Tourism promotions, the local government describes it as a mystery lake. For more than half a century, anthropologists and scientists have studied the remains and puzzled over a host of questions. Who were these people? When did they die? How did they die? Where did they come from? One of theories associates the remains to an Indian king, his wife, and their attendants, all of whom perished in a blizzard some 870 years ago.
Perished in a
blizzard. Perished. Extremely cold. Perished in a blizzard. Snow. Blizzard. A severe snowstorm with strong winds. Blizzard. One old fairy associates the remains to an Indian king, his wife, and their attendants, all of whom perished in a blizzard, some 870 years ago. Another suggests that some of the remains are of Indian soldiers who tried to erupt Tibet in 1841 and were beaten back. More than 70 of them were then forced to find their way home over the Himalayas and died on the way. Yet another assumes that this could have been a
cemetery,
a cemetery where victims of an epidemic were buried. In villages in the area, there is a popular folk song that talks about how goddess Nanda,
goddess Nanda Devi,
goddess Nanda Devi created a holy storm as hard as iron, which killed people riding their way past the lake. India's second highest mountain, Nanda Devi, is is we were we serve we were
revered,
revered revered as a goddess. Earlier studies of skeletons have found that most of the people who died were tall, more than average stature. Stature. Most of them were middle-aged adults, aged between 35 and 40. There were no babies or children. Some of them were elderly women. All were of reasonably good health. Also, it was generally assumed that the skeletons were of a single group of people who died all at once in a single catastrophic incident during the 9th century. The latest 5-year-long study, involving 28 cadavers from 16 institutions based in India, US, and Germany, found all these assumptions may not be true. Scientists genetically analyzed and carbon dated the remains of 38 bodies, including 15 women, found at the lake. Some of them date back to around 1,200 years. Only when the snow melts do the skeletons become visible at the lake side. They find that the dead were both genetically diverse, and their deaths were separated in time by as much as 1,000 years. It upends any explanations that involve a single catastrophic event that lead to their death. Adeline Harney, the lead author of the study, and a doctoral student at Harvard University told me it is still not clear what happened at Rokunik, but we can now be certain that the deaths of these individuals cannot be explained by a single event. But more interestingly, the genetic study found the deaf comprised of diverse people. One group of people had genetics similar to present-day people who live in South Asia, while the other closely related to people living in present-day Europe, particularly those living in the Greek island of Crete. Also, the people who came from South Asia do not appear to come from the same population. Some of them have ancestry, ancestry,
Ancestry.
ancestry, ancestry, ancestry,
Ancestry.
ancestry,
Ancestry. Ancestry. Ancestry.
ancestry. Your ancestors who lived a long time ago, or the origin of your family, ancestries. Ancestry. Some of them have ancestries that would be more common in groups from the north of the subcontinent, subcontinent,
Subcontinent.
while others have ancestry, ancestries, while others have ancestry that would be more common for more southern groups, says Miss Harry. So did this diverse group, diverse group. So did this diverse group of people travel to the lake in smaller batches over a period of a few hundred years? Did some of them die during a single event? No arms or weapons or trade goods were found at the site. The lake is not located on the trade route. Genetic studies found no evidence of the presence of any ancient bacterial pathogen that could provide disease as an explanation for the cause of death. Ancient bacterial pathogen 原始細菌做一啲古代遠古嘅細菌嘅嗰個 pathogen 嗰個原嗰個嗰個原細菌嘅始祖啊，古代細菌始祖。Ancient bacterial pathogen. Ancient bacterial pathogen. Pathogen.
Ancient bacterial pathogen.
Any ancient bacterial pathogen that could provide disease as an explanation for the cause of death.
Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage.
Pilgrimage. A pilgrimage that passes by the lake might explain why people were traveling in the area. Studies reveal that credible accounts of pilgrimage in the area do not appear until the late 19th century, but inscriptions in local temples date between 8th and 10th centuries, suggesting potential earlier origins. So scientists believe that some of the bodies found at the site happened because of a mass death during a pilgrimage event. But how did people from the eastern Mediterranean land cup as a remote neck in India's highest mountains. It seems unlikely that people from Europe would have traveled all the way from Rutland to participate in a Hindu pilgrimage.
Hindu pilgrimage.
Hindu pilgrimage, or was it a genetically isolated population of people from distant eastern Mediterranean ancestry that had been living in the region for many generations? We are still searching for answers.